All right, let's get started. Hey everybody, my name is Ethan Levy, and I'm here to present Legendary Game of Heroes, 5 lessons from 12 months of LiveOps growth. And actually, between the time I put this presentation together and now, we've had an additional 4 months being live, so it's actually the top 5 lessons from 16 months. A little bit about me. I've spent 14 years working in game development, worked on over 50 shipped titles across console, PC, mobile, mostly in the free-to-play space, mostly some interaction of design and monetization. For the past 2 years, I've had the pleasure of working on this game as part of Network, Legendary Game of Heroes. If you haven't played Legendary, I think it could be quickly summed up as Puzzle & Dragons westernized. So today I'm going to talk about, over the past 16 months as we've been in players' hands, I think I personally and the team have learned a lot, and we've grown a lot, and I wanted to kind of summarize some of the top things I've learned over this period of time. Just to give you a feeling for what we're talking about, this chart shows ARPDAU growth over the course of 2016. This is, each data point is a 30-day preceding average, so I didn't just want to talk about peaks and valleys, but actually numbers that represent really sustained ARPDAU or player engagement metrics. So this is our growth over the course of 2016 in terms of ARPDAU, and you can see in the middle a big kind of baseline resetting as we hit worldwide launch. And similarly, you know, it's not just about how much each player spends, but it's about how much time each player spends in the game, and our player, you know, our engagement time per day for your average player has also grown. Looking just at that 2016 period, we have increased 652% in terms of our ARPDAU and 136% in terms of minutes per day spent, and that's if you're looking at a 30-day average. So that's, I'm not just giving you like our worst technical issues to our peak sale day. That's a 30-day average for each one of those. This growth has really enabled remarkable results on the iOS store. We've been top 100 in 63 countries, 49 countries on Android. We've gone top 10 in 18 countries on iOS. And we've done this all with a team of 15 people. So today, I'm going to be talking primarily about feature development and the lessons learned from feature development. And the reason I'm focusing on that is because that's where I spend the vast majority of my time. But it's really important to note that features alone don't produce results like these, right? As I said, we've got about 15 or 16 full-time people on the team, a bunch of shared studio resources, and just world-class people in every one of these pillars. And it's taken a blend of live operations, UA and business intelligence, feature development, player support, all held up by a strong studio operations staff and all held up by a world-class studio culture. And so I'm here talking about features and the impact of features on growth, but this game is a complex ecosystem, and all mobile games like this are a complex ecosystem, and it's not just one thing. It's the full team and the full studio's effort that I'm talking about today. So as I said, it's really world-class execution across all these pillars that have empowered our LiveOps growth. So with that, let's talk about the top 5 lessons I've taken away when reflecting on this period. Number 1, focus on inflection. So if you look at this, this is a list of all of our major updates over the course of the year. I left out some small point releases that are just bug fixes. And they range from, you know, you can see our soft launch in early November of 2015 up to Commander Skill, which we're actually releasing this week. And by about 6 or 7 on Tuesday, we'll be able to know how well players are receiving our new Commander Skill with the Crusade event. So I've taken the ARPDAU chart and I've broken it up, each color by kind of the period of the major feature release. And so this is why I used those 30-day preceding averages so that you could see on each day for the next 30 days what the average are. So because I was really interested in the trends and in spotting where things change. And as you can see, there's a giant baseline reset when we go worldwide, and that's because we're looking at per player metrics, and when we went worldwide, we got an influx of featured player thanks to features from our friends at Apple and Google. We were very lucky to have that. And we also started scaling our user acquisition. And so once we started scaling up our players, there was a baseline reset. So for right now, I'm going to zoom in on that soft launch period. And that first month in January is pulling in a lot of days where there was not a lot of people. So really starting on February through worldwide launch is where I feel like these numbers are really valuable to look at. So I said my top lesson was to focus on inflection. What am I talking about? So you can see with our 1.2 release, we built the support for events. But we didn't yet have leaderboards on those events, and so we were missing the competition angle of it, and we didn't actually start running events. We kind of laid the baseline with our 1.2, and you can see, never mind. That first trend line is showing where ARPDAU was heading on 1.2, and then as soon as we turned on leaderboards, turned on competition, and started running events on a weekly basis, you can see the inflection in our ARPDAU that caused. So when I look at this 16 months worth of updates, I look at 4 releases, and I think these really had immediate measurable inflections. Leaderboards and turning on weekly events, our Raid Boss event harness, which was a new type of event we released in May of last year, optimization on the Android platform, and our guilds. I look at those and I can say like, oh, you can point to really immediate inflections on all those. And there were a bunch of updates, either major or minor, without immediate and without those big impactful jumps. They still had an impact, and each one had a positive impact, but it wasn't that really satisfying level up. So, you know, why am I making the differentiation? Well, obviously, if I focus on feature development, I feel like each time you release a new update, it's kind of your turn at the bat, and really I'd love to hit a home run every time I'm up there. And where our home runs came from was adapting and innovating on best practices from the marketplace. But we hit plenty of base hits along the way, and those base hits, I would say, were either bundles of smaller features that didn't tie together into a cohesive whole immediately, or something I've started calling bank shots. So what do I mean by a bank shot? I mean when you're trying to inflect a specific metric, or you're trying to motivate a specific behavior, but the way your feature gets there isn't a direct line. It's more like, oh, if I hit off this wall and off this wall, then this is what the player will do. So to give you a really tangible example, late last year we released a Guild Wars feature, and it had a couple different motivations, and one of the motivations was to increase the appetite for heroes. In our game, you bring 5 heroes with you into each round of combat, and you really, during the course of the week, probably only need 5 great heroes for that event until you go to the next event when you need another 5 heroes. And most of those heroes might be the same, or now that we're running different event types, the same as you did 2 weeks ago. And so we released this Guild War feature where it was the first chance that one player has to attack another in the game, and we released skills and counter skills. So there was interplay between one player's attacking deck and one player's defending deck, and that was 5 attackers and 5 defenders. And part of the idea was that we would increase the appetite for rare characters over time thanks to an evolving meta and the counterplay between skills and counter skills. And so you can kind of see what I mean by bank shot. It wasn't a very direct line. So now with perfect, beautiful 2020 hindsight, I can look at that and say, well, you know, I wish that if we had wanted to increase our appetite for heroes, we had done it by delivering a game mode that required more heroes. If we want to make it that you need more than 5 6-star heroes, then we should make a game mode that requires 36-star heroes at the highest levels of competition, something like that. That, to me, is a much more direct attempt at it. Anyways, so the lesson here, as I said, is before committing to an update, ask yourself, is this going to directly inflect our business? And I think it's kind of a tough question to ask. We had what I think was a very successful moment late last year when we started going down the path for a feature that was called World Boss. And in the room when we decided to pursue World Boss, part of its appeal was it seemed like a low-effort feature that we could get out fairly quickly that would have a nice inflection. And so we started designing this feature. We got it to what I would call about 60% resolution. We started reviewing it, and it seemed like in order to really make it a feature that was up to our standards of greatness, it would be much more meaningfully effortful than we initially anticipated. And when we looked at the amount of effort it would take to get World Boss out and the amount of effort some of the other things we thought would be more impactful out, we said, well, let's stop developing World Boss and choose one of those things and work on that instead. And even though that meant throwing out a significant amount of design work and potentially even causing some inefficiencies in the development and release of new features, I think it was worth it. I think we made the right choice by choosing to focus on something that we believed in could be inflective relative to the amount of effort we were putting in. Second lesson, build for your bandwidth. So all teams have bottlenecks, and when I look at kind of the middle period of 2016, one of ours was building game data. As I said, there are a couple features that I look at and I feel like we made immediate measurable inflections in our software. And then there are a lot of things that I look at and I say, well, we put great tools in the toolbox. And some of those we're still pulling out and using today, right? Everything that we have done has been useful over a period of time and helped us increase how much fun events are for players, make the software better, make more revenue per player. But I think there's a period where it felt like we were building, more tools than we could use at their full potential. And that was because we had a really turbocharged world-class engineering team and not enough manpower on the PM front for the amount of tools that we were building to use them effectively. Let me give you two examples. One example is an early feature that was ally missions. The design intention was it was a really low-effort feature where we wanted to increase session frequency by giving a snackable timer-based mission. The inspiration point was missions that you'd be familiar with from Mobile Strike or Game of War. And at the time, this failing I can take ownership of. This is my failing. When I set it up with no loss aversion. And when I look at what works well in those missions in Mobile Strike is if you don't come back every 6 hours and collect all your timers, you've lost resources. But the way I set these up was that there was no loss aversion. Once you get past a certain rank, there are always 4 ally missions available for you. And so there's no part of you that says, I have to come back to the game to set one of my allies on this ally mission, and when that 15-minute timer's up, I better come back to set the next one. Instead, they're always available. The rewards are fairly consistent and not that great, and you can look at it and go, once you're a high-level player, and just sort of forget about this whole section of the game. And so this feature hasn't had a retune, I think, since its launch. We use allies and other ally missions as part of our weekly events. So as I said, they're a valuable tool in the toolbox. But at no point have we put the effort towards going back and raising up the level of what these do. And it's not really clear to me that that effort would be paid off relative to putting that same amount of effort in another area of the game. Another example would be the enemy skills system that we first released, I think, in 1.2 or 1.3 kind of early on. Our design intention was to increase intention by adding progression novelty to the campaign. And our game is like a Candy Crush match game below with an RPG mechanic on top with a bunch of heroes with stats and skills. And part of the intention here was that your enemies would drop gems on the board below that would add a little bit of skill play in and change things up and make levels more exciting. We could use it to make the campaign more exciting and events more exciting, etc. When we first implemented enemy skills, we put it in one section of the game, which was the daily dungeons, and it really took a long time until those enemy skills and the skill system in general started to bubble up and play a meaningful role outside of that initial use. And again, I look at that as our bottleneck on design and data creation, right? We had to be very tactical every day about what the PMs are doing to level up the software. And so we have things where I feel like we just didn't use the tools to the full potential. But now, I mean, we made those investments, and in the past 2 weeks, one of our new and very talented team members has been pumping out unique battle skills and enemy skills for our event characters that I think finally make this part of the game shine, and where I've had some of the most fun in our events recently with our characters because they're starting to feel unique. So over time, that investment has paid off. But when I look at that period of time, what I think the lesson is to adjust your output to match your capabilities. Given the mismatch we had in terms of how much could be accomplished between this world-class engineering team and not quite enough PMs, I wish we had done more better, right? I think we could have made even more inflection than we made by investing in fewer features and bringing them out either at higher quality or bringing them out at a faster cadence. And again, that's one of those great lessons you can see with a lot of clarity in hindsight. Lesson number 3, LiveOps events are the heart of your game. I joined the Legendary team. I think it would be kind of on the tail end of pre-production, at the beginning of production. We didn't have clearly defined milestones, but I think getting to version 0.9 was like, we're building the base game, and then that year of growth was like, we're building the events on top of the base game. We're building the event structure on top of it. And I think that the key lesson I've really taken away is that LiveOps events are the core of your game when you're focused on this sort of game. And there is no separate other base game, and I wish we had just started there. So this is a slide I already showed, right? This is showing the inflection point when we just started releasing, and released our first event that was driven by leaderboards. We saw an immediate inflection. And ever since that point, we've run one event every week up till we have an event ending tomorrow at 5. Our weekly events pull on a core LiveOps suite. As I said, everything contributes to our events, but kind of the core of it are our 2 harnesses, which are our special dungeon and our raid boss harness. And actually next week, we're leaning into an older part of the software, the activity map, and combining it with the raid boss harness to make even a new event type. But you've got your event harnesses, the leaderboards that drive competition. Initially, it was just solo competition. Now it's solo competition, an additional global leaderboard for top players, and a guild leaderboard, all within an event. We've got a pop-up system that plays a critical role in the game, and we've got guilds and localization. Every event, we time it, the execution of it, so that all the text is localized in the key countries that we localize in, which was, that was a fun moment of LiveOps growth, getting things together early enough to get everything localized. But that's kind of the core of our LiveOps suite. So what does that mean when I say we run an event each week? Well, we have some form of limited time content, which is a special dungeon, an area where you fight special raid bosses, which have unique rules relative to the base campaign game. And now with these Crusader events, we're experimenting with using the campaign map to be part of that limited time content. So those levels are there, those bosses are there, and when the event turns off, they're gone. Every week, there's at least one new event boss. I snapped screenshots from our Phantom of the Opera event because I think it was one of my favorite examples of giving the art team something that's not immediately obvious in a puzzle RPG, and I think they really executed it at an amazing level. I really enjoy these characters. But so limited time content, brand new boss, competition on a leaderboard. As I said, we've grown over time from having, even out of the gate, we had segmented league-based leaderboards, but now we have a solo leaderboard, a separate global leaderboard that if you're in one of the top positions in the game, you get both solo and global leaderboard results, and guild leaderboards. Each leaderboard gives rewards, and that boss character is the exclusive, exciting reward that you can get only from that event. We also sell at least one new hero in a new card pack with each event, and we use our pop-up system, our event-driven pop-up system, to run in-game marketing and in-game messaging about what's new, what's exciting, what's valuable, decks you should build, etc. That's kind of the core suite. A slight addendum to Rule 3 is that left unchanged, event performance will decay over time. Now, what do I mean by that? When we launched out of the gate, we just had dungeon events, and as I said, we were in the road to soft launch We had a lot we need to, from soft launch to worldwide launch, we had a lot we needed to do. And so for a period of time, we were pretty much running the same dungeon event week after week after week. That's all we had. And over time, we saw players' interest naturally leveling off. Until we released our second event harness, our Raid Boss harness, which really turned around the trend there and allowed us to run 2 different events, Dungeon, Raid Boss, back to back, and so to keep things fresh. On top of it, not only do we have like 2 major categories of events, but as I've been saying, all these tools we put in the toolbox we use to change up events, to improve their performance, to make it clear for the player what's important. So, in my first point, I hit on immediate inflection and trying to hit a home run every time. If I look in that 1-2 and I look at pop-ups at the time, just driving in-game marketing, on its own might not have seemed like one of the most inflective things we've done in the game, but over the time, as we've leaned into that and learned to use it better and really focused on our marketing messaging, that has probably become one of the most impactful features we've added to the game. And it was easy to look at it and go like, oh, we added marketing pop-ups. We can put images in front of players and text, hooray. But it's actually like, over time, learning to use all of those tools in the toolbox has driven this incredible growth in terms of ARPDAU, or has been one of the main things driving growth in terms of ARPDAU and player engagement over time. What I put up there, and this kind of hits to the point that I'm focusing mainly on the impact of features, but these changes in ARPDAU and player engagement are not just about features. It's a complex ecosystem, and so you're getting a combination of feature inflections, population veterancy, and event optimization. So new things that change the way players behave in the game. The metrics naturally changing as your player population grows over time. Right? If you have a successful free-to-play game, that means your veteran players are sticking around for a long period of time. And so as the mix of new players or early game players to veteran players changes, your ARPDAU and daily engagement are naturally going to grow over time because your veteran players are naturally the most engaged and tend to spend the most. And so part of that's just the shift between those that's natural over the growth of the game, and part of it's intentional through feature growth, and part of it is through event optimization. But as I said at the beginning, events with leaderboard competition and exclusive content to buy and win are really at the heart of what I think a modern free-to-play mobile game is. And really, if this was day one of a new mobile game, new free-to-play mobile game, this would be one of the primary design considerations. Lesson number 4 was to believe in the power of guilds. I think if you look at the top 150 grossing games, and you look in the mid-core section, you can see that there are a lot of games with guilds where it's been really successful. There are games with guilds where maybe it hasn't paid off, but I think going into this game, I had never operated a game with true guilds, and releasing it has, I think, been one of the major inflections that the team has made during the course of this game's live operations. So at its heart, guilds are a player can join a group of people. They have a shared chat room where they can strategize. They have a guild emblem now, which they didn't have at launch, but they have a guild emblem to symbolize who they are. The leadership has some tools around setting different ranks of players in the software in their guild, so you can promote some people to the council or give them the title of dukes and duchesses to just show how they're doing in the guild. So it's a chat room. The ability for the guild to compete as a unit on a guild leaderboard during each event, and the ability for players in the guild to earn special gifts. We made this item gifts that when you earn it, you can only send it to a guild member. So for instance, I may earn a gift due to my placement on the solo leaderboard at the end of an event. I may purchase a $100 IAP pack and get 10 gem gifts to spread the wealth with other players in my guild, and I can't use them in myself. I can only send them around. Now, guilds did not have an incredibly long period in soft launch. It was the last thing we launched right before worldwide. So the reason you're looking at inflection downward is because this graph ends at the point where it crosses over and the inflection happens. So this is just the soft launch graph. So let's zoom out to the worldwide launch graph. And as you can see, there's that, as I said, that natural resetting when we went from soft launch to worldwide launch and we scaled up meaningfully. But when you look here on this ARPDAO chart, you can see that inflection that the guild system was a part of. When I look at it, I think introducing guilds was a major inflection point for the game. So let's go back to that previous chart I was showing, where I'm showing ARPDAO on top and player engagement on bottom. And as I said, this growth isn't feature-centric. It's an ecosystem. So part of that growth was due to our user acquisition strategy. Part of it was feature inflection from the guilds and subsequent features we launched. Part of it was event optimization. And part of it is that population veterancy. So what do I think that guilds' major contributor to the software was? People who are in social groups and are in an engaged social group are going to stick around for longer. And so guilds, by creating more veterans, helps improve the stacking of veteran players in our software and increase the portion of our player base that are veterans, and that lifts all of our metrics on a per player basis and has a meaningful difference meaningful change in our absolute numbers. So let me go back to my lesson. Guilds belong at the heart of modern free-to-play game. So if I take those two and combine it, and if today was day one on a new mobile free-to-play product, the first question is, how is this game built for guild events? That's the primary design consideration in my mind. Number 5, this one's a real short one. Complexity of feature design increases over time. So I'm just going to talk about 2 features. One we launched early on, leaderboards. One we're building right now, relics and scrolls. And if I just, at a high level, segmented league-based leaderboards that drive competition and a set of relics that you can equip to a team to boost their stats are not wildly different in a vacuum in terms of effort. But at the point where we released leaderboards, the game was much less complicated. So this is the overview page from leaderboards. These are the 6 main screens that leaderboards had to touch from a user-facing perspective. This is the overview page of our currently in development Relics and Scrolls PDF, and I think it's like 32 or 33 screens. And as I said, in a vacuum, these 2 features aren't crazily different. What's different is that the size of the game has increased and the number of points each one of these new features has to integrate with increases. So as feature richness increases, so does the complexity of adding new features to the core loop. And I think if you've heard any of my previous talks, I've hit on this a lot, that building features into the core loop in a way where they market themselves is critical to players discovering them and them having the impact that you want on the game. So my counterpart, Hide, who I think was really the architect of the game economy, he came to this game with an incredible view on the needs of growing the game economy over time, and he knew and planned for that growth. On the UX side, I don't think we did enough to plan for the growth and anticipate years of growth of features being added to our game and needing to add them to the core loop. And each feature we just have to do more like UX refactoring to make sure it really works and that it's surfaced to the player. And I think this is natural. There's just like, there was no way to not have stat inflation in our game over time and power creep over time, and it's a challenge just to plan for it and make sure to provide a great user experience. I don't think it's possible to grow your game's feature depth over 3 years and not need this sort of refactoring over time, but I think better planning for it at the outset would have made our lives easier in presenting great features to players over time. So wrapping up real quick, these are my top 5 lessons. Focus on inflection, build for your bandwidth, LiveOps and guilds and LiveOps events that guilds compete in are at the heart of your game. Build tools that allow you to combat the natural decay of events and plan for the fact that your feature design complexity will increase over time. And really the most important thing to take away from this presentation is great results are possible over time. You can do incredible things during the LiveOps period of your game, during the soft launch and worldwide launch to change how players interact with your game. But it's not just one of these pillars, it's all of them. It's world-class people working together across LiveOps, UA, feature development, player support, supported by a great studio, built on a great culture. This is what it takes. It takes all of these things to achieve greatness with a modern mobile free-to-play game. So thank you very much. Went a little bit long. I probably have time for one, maybe two questions, then I can take questions for anybody who has them who'd like to stick around. Anyone? All right. Well, thank you all very much. Oh, we've got one.
Hi. Very good speech, thanks. And what's about impact on revenue of sales, of pop-ups like Game of War or Mobile Strike?
So the question was, what is the impact on revenue of sales? And I think there are two types of sales, and it's very important to think about them differently. One is a sale where you're selling currency. So I used to I used to play Mobile Strike 6 times a day, every day for months. Now I pop in once a month. And each month, that sale, the amount of bonus gold is inflated, right? They've inflated that over time. And so what that means is that they're selling currency. And a key lesson I've learned is that selling currency can be a really effective way to boost your revenue in the short term. But generally, the more currency you sell, there's a hangover on new currency purchases after that happens, unless you've designed the game so that there are new things to always be soaking up that currency. So selling currency is really effective, but you have to plan for the after effects. The other thing, a thing I think we focus on selling a lot more is new things that are really limited time. And that's worked really well for us. And there you're just dealing with a different sort of inflation. You're dealing with the power inflation over time. Another part of your question was about the pop-ups and how important are the pop-ups. Pop-ups are key to promoting and explaining the value of new things that we're putting on sale in our game. Neil's in the back row, and I think within at least the last week, if not the last two, there have been times where he goes, "What's wrong with the pop-ups?" And it's because he looks at the hourly revenue and he can tell instantly that something's wrong with how we're messaging to our players. So as I said before, like the power of messaging to your players, what you're selling to them and what the value of those things are to their play experience, it can't be overstated.
Thanks.
Yep, I'll just take one more.
Hello, this is Victor from Gameloft. You said that you had kind of problem with kind of content fatigue with the weekly events. What is for you the best way to counteract that? So through gameplay or through the metagame, let's say?
So the question was, early on I said we had a problem with fatigue during events, and it's just kind of a natural part of the game. I think that the best way to combat that, you're not going to be able to release a completely new event harness every week. It takes a long time to build each one of those. And so really focusing as a LiveOps team on novelty, having the tools to introduce new things and releasing new client updates that make minor improvements, such as I mentioned, the global leaderboards, or launching this week commander skills, like just introducing new things over time and using the tools you have to make things feel as new as possible.
But the way, because you're commenting new skills, this is pure gameplay, no? You're commenting new leaderboard system, this metagame. So what do you think? It's both things at the same time? You can change just one, change the other? It is one that works better?
I think it's both. I mean, I think it's you have to each week basically look at the tools you have and say, like, what's the best thing we can deliver? Or do we need to deliver absolutely new things?
Okay. So
no easy answer, sorry.
No magical formula there.
No.
Okay.
All right, thank you all very much for listening, and please fill out your review. Let me know how I can improve, and hopefully I'll be back next year to tell you about another 12 months of growth.